Hello, cultural warriors. Welcome back again. It's been a little while. I keep saying we'll try and do a little more of these videos regularly, and I think we will. Maybe make them a little less formal, so they don't feel like I have to do them here in our little war room here. Um, we'll just have to take some props with this someplace else. But I wanted to talk a little about this week about something that, well, somebody sent something to me, and it really made me think. They sent some rather humorous pictures of some of the Biden family, and we made some jokes about it and so forth. And then it occurred to me that really we should give the devil their due. This is one of the most successful, inconsequential families in America. I mean, you have an entire family here that really has amounted to nothing except for having a relative president, which seems like a lot. But what we've seen is not so much. The job doesn't make the man or the woman. They make the job. So we've sort of seen what happens when you put someone who's incapable of mounting a set of stairs in charge of the free world, or at least a good piece of it. And that occurred to me as a kind of a great metaphor. Most of you remember not that long ago when President Biden was trying to climb up a flight of stairs to Air Force One. And he fell 3 times and dragged himself up and managed to get in there. I thought that was a great metaphor. You notice he was falling, he's failing, couldn't get it done, but he still went up. I thought that was a great example of what's happening. He's failing upward. We use that term and we never really see it. There it is. It's a perfect example of what's happened to Joe for his whole career. He hasn't really accomplished anything. He just keeps failing upward. His family never really have accomplished anything either, except sort of latch onto his coattails as he tumbles down up. We're unfortunately the recipients of that. And I think when we understand that a little bit better, it tells us a little bit about what's happened to American politics. We've had bad leaders before. Now, Biden's on his way to maybe being the worst president, but he's got a little ways to go. He's got that Buchanan presidency he's got to get out of the way. The one just before the Civil War. He was a pretty bad president. We've had inconsequential presidents before. We've had a few inconsequential men. But Biden's right there at the very top. He and Brian Williams, the old NBC anchor that went on to MSNBC because of his wonderful, fanciful storytelling that he had about himself. He was always at the center of all those adventures, wasn't he? It's exciting to live like old Brian. And Joe's the same way, measuring chain off against corn pop. Right there, you should know something. Anybody that tells you a story about when they were a kid and they're fighting someone named Corn Pop, you really can't say that they're fooling you very much. Anything that happens after that, can you? Well, what happens? What makes people do things like that? Well, it's because, in their mind anyway, they've never been very good at anything. And so they consequentially make things up about themselves, about the way they'd really like to be. Measuring length of chain off against corn pop, slamming somebody's head down on the counter when they insulted his sister. One goofy story after another. One that would be obvious to anybody with an IQ of about 45 to be obviously not true. But you get away with it if you're on the right side of the political spectrum now. And the only thing you have to be on the right side of the political spectrum for is to be on the side of media, big tech, and other people who want to buy votes. We're just one step away from paying people to vote, right? So this is the kind of leader you get. And it's just sort of indicative of the sort of corruption we have in government right now. We have terrible leaders who spend most of their time narrowing down the period of time that they worry about to have success or failure. Most politicians throughout history care very little about the country they represent, the county, the city, whatever the case may be, but they like the power, they like the things that come with it. There's been some good ones, don't get me wrong. There are very good ones out there, maybe 20%, maybe a little higher. Most of them, though, if they do something good, it's because they're trying to keep themselves in power a little longer. In our situation, what's happened is the length of time that people are worried about on the far left is less and less. What's happening right now is not sustainable past, I don't know, a year maybe, year and a half. What I see, and I think you would too if you looked at it very carefully, is you have a group of people that really don't much care what happens after November of 2022. Now, they recognize there's probably a disaster headed their way electorally for the progressive left, unless they can figure out some way to dump a lot of people's votes in the river or count some people's 8 or 9 times or something like that. They're going to have a whole lot of trouble. I do think they're going to probably spend some time trying to come up with some different ways to keep people locked down like they did last time, so that everybody's vote will get mailed in or just sail away into the ether, and who knows where it ends up. But if that doesn't happen, and I don't think it will, they got to come up with something else. And this is their backup plan. Well, plan A, attack Trump. He seems to be clearly the biggest threat, although frankly, the Republicans have a much better bench than the Democrats. Who do you get after Joe? Kamala? I don't even think I have to comment on that. And then who? Pete Buttigieg, the failed mayor? I mean, I don't know what you say about that. They even have another mayor on the list of the New York Times had this idea about, well, maybe Joe shouldn't run. We have a list of people who we can probably put out there. Really, there's some real winners on that list. There's Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, who has spent most of her time trying to turn herself into Lucretia Borgia or something. She is just drunk with power. When anybody challenges her, she doubles down on them, and would love apparently to lock everybody up if she could. We have Pritzker, who's on that list from Illinois, who is so terrible that it's almost inconceivable that he would be on anybody's list for anything except possible incarceration. Although, I'm not saying I'm accusing him of a crime. I'm just saying that he would be better kept far away from everything, particularly the levels of power. These are the people that left on there. But one of them is a mayor, Mitch Landrieu, down in New Orleans. The Landrieu family, has always sort of been running in and out of Louisiana politics this last 40 or 50 years. And they've devolved back down from the Senate to mayor of New Orleans, but they think they're going to make him the infrastructure czar. And he might be a possibility. That's how desperate they are. Now, we all know that desperate people do desperate things, and so we have to be very careful as we watch what goes on this next election. But I think the most dangerous thing we see is how little anybody on the far left cares about something that might happen, way, way off in time, like 2 years, 3 years. All of these policies are going to come home to roost. Inflation like this doesn't last. I mean, it can get worse, but eventually it crashes. And eventually the only way you come out of it is a recession. The longer you have the inflation, the higher the inflation goes, the harder and longer the recession. You have to take money out of the system. Otherwise, the money that's out there is worthless. And we're not quite ready to devalue the currency down to nothing and have our dollar turn into the ruble. But other than that, the longer you keep pumping money in and paying people, hoping they'll stay happy, hoping you can give them something so that they'll vote for you, well, the longer the downward slide and the hammer is going to be when it finally comes down. So when we're thinking about voting, let's think about not our own short-term gain. We'd like to keep ourselves okay and our head above water. But let's remember that if we're not careful, we'll vote for policies that will push our head way underwater for a long time. And just keep your eye peeled out there, my Viking friends, as we sail the seas of culture and politics and history, because it's all been done before and usually better. But we can learn some lessons here. People hold on to power for shorter and shorter periods of time when they get more and more desperate. They care less and less. Pretty soon it's just a couple of days. We're going to have to make sure that we don't allow things to slip to the point where their desperate attempts are successful. We have simple choices. Good candidates, strong support, constant vigilance on our part to make sure that we know what's going on as much as possible. You can go to my website, thepoliticalviking.com, or therickWagnershow.com, which is who I am, and it's the page for the radio show. It's all news. Don't sell anything. All news and links and so forth. Keep going there and check things out. It's a good place to find out what's happening. We'll see you soon.